Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second framework training. We're holding these monthly for all the framework members so that you guys can get the most out of this program that we've built for you. Today, we are having our financial analyst at Hinge, Taylor Leaphart, to guide you through the framework program from his perspective as a financial analyst. So it'll probably be more helpful than mine last month. But he's going to guide you through some of the same things that I did last month, but through his perspective of what he believes are best practices for inputting numbers, reviewing reports, doing what if forecasting. And at the end, I will also answer one of the frequently asked questions that we've received, which is, how do I add new licenses if I'm a multi-site location? So I will let Taylor take it away. And if you have any questions, enter them in the chat box. We have a lot of people from the Hinge team to answer any questions that you have. All right, Taylor.
Awesome. Thank you, Meredith. First off, I'm super excited to be presenting, especially this workshop this afternoon. And I love the content that we're starting to put out around framework because I think it's such a valuable tool that cannot get enough praise. It cannot get enough attention, especially from our team here at Hinge, because we believe that leveraged correctly and used properly, it could be a very insightful tool, not only from your finances, but also can impact the overall operations of your company as well, driving you a little bit closer to overall financial health and putting more money in your pocket and essentially back to your families so that you can provide better care and better service of your overall curriculum. And like Meredith said, we're going to kind of dive into this pretty quickly, go over kind of some high level things. We'll walk through an agenda of today's workshop, walking through some best practices on what to bring with you as you approach framework for the first time, what would be best use of your time, and how to navigate just really getting into framework, understanding the basic functionality and how we're inputting numbers. And then once we walk through the number side, there's a plethora of insights and reports that the tool spits out and allows you to play some what if games, looking at different areas of your operation and your finances. If I increase this level of my tuition, what does that do to this expense? Or if this expense increases, what does my overall financial picture look like? So those are some really insightful tools that we'll walk through at the latter half of this presentation. And as we conclude entering in all of that information and kind of reviewing those reports, we have several team members from our financial services arm of Hinge to kind of give some insights inside of how we can leverage this tool going forward as far as budgeting, forecasting, as well as some webinars and some dates to keep in mind in the future that will only allow you to maximize this tool and really take advantage of everything it has to offer from a managerial and finance prep and overall health of your company. So some best practices, come prepared. So what we really recommend kind of once you are able to sit down and give some time to this tool is having a most current tuition rate sheet, enrollment report, as well as profit and loss. Now, it is very important that your enrollment matches up for the same period as the profit and loss statement that you are inputting into framework. So if you're looking at a 2022 full year for enrollment, let's also bring the profit and loss statement for the 2022 period. I would highly recommend bringing something that's a little more current if that is available to you. If you do your reports in-house, I strongly encourage a trailing 12. So the most current 12 months, if you can provide that as far as a P&L statement and an enrollment report, will just give you more insightful and current information for you to implement into your school right off the cuff. And also we've split this out into a couple sections where we look at tuition discounts, and then we start to piece away at the expenses that will go into staffing, facility, and then other operational expenses. And we encourage you to take breaks. We've built the tool so that it saves as you input through each page. And that is very useful, especially if this is your first time going through your reports and having to transpose it into any kind of forecasting tool. Um, it does get very taxing on the eyes, and as you work through the tool, we want this to be an experience that you take away from as much as you're inputting into the tool. And for that to be the most effective, take your time by all means. And if you run into any obstacles, feel free to reach out to one of us, any of the Hinge members. We are all pretty well versed in the framework function and are more than happy to take that break with you, walk through what you've done so far, and pick everything back up walking into framework. So with that being said, let's jump into framework so we can walk through inputting some of this data. So when you log into your framework page, there are a lot of different options and some selections to walk through. Kind of starting at the top and working down, we have just implemented a lot of resources that are directly accessible through this tool from, in addition to the reports and insights that are influenced by your inputs, we have all of the webinars that are directly related to framework and how to use framework. In addition to our framework sprints have all been uploaded into a direct link onto YouTube for a playlist for our Hinge webinars. And we'll see if we can bring that up to give you a little sneak peek. All these are accessible directly from the link, and I highly encourage you just to kind of walk through, take it in spurts and sprints, if you will, to get some information and to, give you some insight so that you can bring back to your team and build a better company for your families and again for your team. Again, the articles do the same thing in blog form, a little more bite size. But the main thing is we have a lot of content information directly accessible through this page, in addition to the standard reports that we have built out in the framework. So once you get to the first general page, easy information. You probably won't need to bring much to the table whenever you're sitting down a framework to enter in your first bit of information. Location name, address. This kind of gives the model some information to work off of as far as building out your benchmarks going forward. We can step into the tuition and occupancy side. From a tuition standpoint, we've added a lot of upgrades here. Traditionally, it used to be where it was pretty singular as far as inputs go, which kind of limited your flexibility based off the way that you run your operations from an enrollment and a tuition standpoint. But we have basic information off the cuff. So for the annual net revenue before discounts, that is a very important distinction there, as we have discounts in the next section. This is for the time period that you have for the P&L that you'll be using and your enrollment period as well. So if you're using a trailing 12, this will be your trailing 12 revenue. If you're using full year 2022, this will be your full year 2022 net revenue, as well as your tuition billing period and the number of periods in the cycle. Some very basic questions as far as, are you keeping up with the competition in your local area, as well as some increase, tuition rate increase information. Historically, how have you been over the last 12 months? And what has that increase been over that time period? Now, this is where we've really upgraded and allowed maximum flexibility so that you can really get a tailored insight and report out of this model. For the tuition rates by class, we've divvied it up by classroom, but also went a step further and allowed some flexibility as enrollment types vary from operation to operation, center to center. We want to be sensitive to that and make sure that we are giving you the most usable and tangible information that you can take back to your center from this tool. So pretty cut and dry and very intuitive as far as uploading your information here. I've preloaded some information as far as classroom size and rate and as far as schedule goes. But for the sake of demo, let's look at, we'll add an after school classroom here, and that will populate in the tuition section. And let's just say our max capacity for our after school is 30. And oh, sorry about that. And we have two schedules or class distinctions, enrollment distinctions within our after school. We have a full-time and a part-time. Well, let's say it's 150 and 100 just for simplicity's sake. And we have 22 enrolled here and 4 enrolled here. Easy as that. So this tells the model that we have a max capacity of our after school program or classroom for this section at 30 child capacity. We have 2 scheduled enrollments, a full-time and a part-time, with the corresponding tuition rates. And our current enrollment based off of the capacity is 26 of a 26 child head count. Now, looking one step further, it also compares that to an FTE. So it'll calculate based on what you select here as your enrollment type on an FTE for those reports and insights on the back end. I really like the flexibility of this tool, and I think it's really come from a lot of feedback from our consumer and our customers in Framework to allow us to evolve this tool. And I think it's an awesome, awesome upgrade that we've done in recent months. I kind of want to stop here, and if we have any questions revolving around occupancy, inputting tuition, let's see if we can't answer those. Feel free to use the chat. And Meredith will pick those up and we can relay those as they come in. But moving forward into discounting, let's save our work and go forward into discounts. Based off of the information that we have added in our tuition section, it influences what this looks like from a discounting perspective. So you can see each one of our classrooms are represented here, as well as our discounts that we offer on the top axis here. And very simply, we input how many of those children within that classroom are taking advantage of that particular discount. So you can see we have a multi-child discount for our families. We're currently not giving any discounts for our infant and toddlers, but we have 2, 2, and 2, our 2s, 3s, and 4s classroom that are taking that advantage as well. We have a staff discount for part-time and full-time, and we have attributed those as well here. So we can, with our additional classroom, we can add in, say we have 5 taking advantage of the discount there. We have 1 and then 2 full-time staff. Now to add an additional discount area, so say we have we have a new company that moved into the area and we want to offer them a discount to kind of attract and boost our enrollment and track those employees to use our services. And we'll provide a modest 10% discount. That will flow right into the chart so that we can appropriately mark the enrollment there as well. So again, let's just say we hold off on our infants and toddlers just so we can maximize that profitability and flow through there. And we have, say, 3 2s, 3 3s, 1 4, no average score. Easy as that. And all that will be dictated based on the reports and your information that you bring to the table as you approach this model. Now, kind of before we get into the expenses look a little bit different as they do from a revenue and discounting perspective. If we have any questions on discount and putting information here, what qualifies, what doesn't qualify, make sure you just type their question into the chat and Meredith will pick it up as well. And feel free, as those questions come up at any point as I'm walking through this model, please let's let this be a very fluid webinar, and your questions are extremely encouraged. I think from a discounting perspective, we've built this in a way that is very intuitive, and I think it allows for maximum flexibility. Again, on the revenue and discounting side. So we're going to save and continue. As we walk into the expenses definitely get a little bit more nuanced when we're inputting this information. So I would encourage you to not really get hung up on making sure that your buckets of expenses match up directly with the framework's bucket of expenses, say like line item for line item. There's not going to be a black and white corresponding input, but I think it's most important that we're consistent as we continue to use this tool. So be mindful of that as you're initially putting these numbers in, and make sure that you're accurately taking note of what expenses you're placing where in the tool, so that whenever we go back to refresh this information, we're able to get a apples to apples comparison and really see that that growth as far as over time, how we're able to maximize the tool. So from a staff cost perspective, based on the time period that you brought forth in the 12 over your 12 months, we input your overall staff costs here. It's also good to know that if you are an owner operated center, meaning you own the business and you are acting as a director, different owners choose to capitalize or choose to manage their money in a different way when it comes to their salary. Some choose to max out a W-2, really increase their salary from a owner's perspective. But also there are other owners that take a very minimal salary and choose to make up the difference in a distribution at the end of the year. Whichever you are using, if you are an owner operator or owner director, for the sake of this tool, we want to take your salary out and input a fair market value for a director of your size and location into your staff costs. That just allows the tool to normalize. Really, the benchmark isn't well equipped to take the fluctuation, especially from a staffing cost. This is one of the larger cost structures in your P&L, and will also kind of affect the output of reports that this tool will give you. So let's just make sure that the director line item is a fair market rate, rather than however you choose to manage your salary and manage your money on that expense. But moving down as standard into other staffing costs, salaries were input at the top, payroll taxes, benefits, any training, recruitment costs, miscellaneous staff costs. Miscellaneous staff costs will be one of those buckets that I referred to earlier, which if you have a line item that says, employee appreciation or uniforms, or you may have in a miscellaneous staff account, that all goes here. We really want to capture and make sure that we're keeping tight the salaries, taxes, and benefits line item in particular, just because that drives the large majority of this section within your financials. I'd also like to point out, as we walk through the expenses, we have little information icons at the end of each input. And this will kind of, right here, it kind of gives you a little bit more information as far as what are we looking to get out of this input, and what it may look like on your end for a detailed P&L, just so that we can match up those line items a little bit better. So as I was saying earlier, this miscellaneous would be anything that attributes to meetings, gifts, uniforms, any miscellaneous that you can't attribute to recruitment, training, benefits, taxes, and overall salaries. I'd also like to point out here that if you leave an input blank, and this goes for the entirety of the model for your expenses, if you leave an input blank, the model will take the benchmark expense and place it into your inputs on your behalf. So let's make sure, if you truly have zero employee costs, and when it comes to recruitment, that we include a zero there, and do not leave that blank. So for example, if I left staff training blank in this section, it would assume for me that my staff training cost is $4,275 automatically, because I left this blank. The model is built to populate all the inputs, either with your input or the benchmark that it's attributed to your school. So let's make sure that we input all the information that we can, that is available to you. Um, I think that covers the staff costs. Are there any questions, anything that I've missed that you would like to go over? I know staffing can be one of those nuanced sections too, because it is such a large piece and such an integral part of your operation. I want to make sure that we're adequately covering that and hitting all those marks. But I feel good about what we have here. So let's say the next, and we will hit our facilities cost. Very similar format to the staff cost. We have some basic information up here attributed to rent, if we have any CAM, and we have this little line item here that will explain what we're looking at as far as CAM expense, and then the facility square footage. And that will calculate down to our rent and CAM expense on an annual basis. And just as the staffing section, we have some of our most popular or most common line items that we've seen over the last 20 years as building this model up. And we have the benchmarks associated with those expenses off to the right. Very similar to how we're filling out all the rest of the expenses. I don't feel like there's too much I need to hit on here. The maintenance expense they can be one of those that I was talking about earlier, where you might have one line item that may overlap between, like your maintenance supplies and lawn care. You might have a lawn care tool that you've spent some money on. Where does that go? How should we attribute that? My recommendation is to not get super hung up on where it goes, but being consistent as we're using the model, making sure that we are inputting our numbers accurately and consistently as we're using the tool. But other than that, we're going to continue on as we are inputting this information. We're going to say the next. Operational expenses will most likely be the most extensive list, and probably from the expense side where you spend most of your time. And we want to make sure that we're inputting this as accurately as possible, because this is what drives a lot of the benchmarks and the reports that we'll see in the later half of the tool. Again, we have a lot of these little icons that'll kind of help you navigate your P&L as far as where to input some of these expenses. Some of the recent updates to this model have allowed a lot of flexibility as far as expense structure, meaning where some of these line items are placed in your P&L compared to how we want to put them, or how we want to treat them in this model. When it comes to other expenses and depreciation, amortization, and interest, we want to take those out of your operational costs, no matter where they are included in your P&L, for the sake of benchmarking and really understanding where your money dollar for dollar is going from an expense perspective. We choose to bring those out of your operational expenses because they are non-cash. Like, you aren't specifically taking money and spending money on depreciation or amortization or your interest. We want to bring those out, but we also want to recognize that some of the money, some of the profitability are going to those line items. So we brought those out. We have those included here. We haven't attributed any benchmarking metrics to them. But I think this is a great tool to keep track and to reconcile your P&L directly to framework. It just allows you a few more buckets to make sure that we're capturing all of your financial data accurately as well. And you'll see here, we have included a grants line as well, fully understanding that over the last 3-4 years, grants have been a major part of your revenue, and other people, a lot of owners and operators have chosen to handle those grants in different ways from a financial perspective, meaning some have included that in their operational revenue. Some have completely withdrawn that and almost treated like they never really had any grants and used it as more of a backup fund. So we take that same approach in saying that it's not really an operational form of revenue, but we need to still recognize that that money still exists within your operation. So we bring that out of tuition, out of your occupancy inputs, and give this a line item down below. We also want to bring that out, understanding that grants are slowly becoming less and less available. So eventually there will be a use of this tool where you won't have any grants to input. So we want to make sure that on longevity purposes, we're able to maximize the use of this tool and not really get it integrated into tuition. I kind of blew through one of the very extensive parts of inputting information into this tool. So if you have any questions on anything specific that you're seeing, feel free to shout it out, and we can address that as we move on through some of the reports and insights. But I feel like this is a very intuitive part of the process. Again, I think the largest hurdle is understanding what buckets you're using on your P&L and how they transfer over into what this looks like from a expense line item perspective. So really spend some time, make sure that you're thoughtfully putting those expenses accurately and where they can best be represented here. Because it ultimately transfers over to what we're about to look at in some of the reports and insights that we're looking at. So let's walk down here. Look at some of the benchmarking tools. Now, right off the bat, it gives you a lot of information. On the first page that you click out of the inputs, I like to start at a high level and then get more and more in detail. So looking at it from the categories that we have inputted in here, and the way that Hinge really looks at how we break out our P&Ls, this gives you an overview of how are we doing from a financial perspective, how financially healthy, and what are some of the areas that we can really focus in on to maximize our profitability. So right off the cuff, we have benchmarked occupancy and the baseline to the left, our data on the right, and then the variance of how we stack up against that baseline at the far right. So you can see, I mean, so we have a standard, if you're at a 5% discounted rate, if that is, could be better, but honestly, you're on the higher end, you're on the higher percentile of national operators, and really minimizing that impact to your overall revenue. Whereas we are touching on, I mean, we're getting close to 10%, so we're almost double that. So this is obviously going to be an area that we can spend some time on. And as we go through these different areas and reports that this tool generates, we'll be able to see that. And we're able to kind of look through line item by line item and really see and dig our teeth into what are some areas that we can really maximize in. Honestly, looking at it from a percentage standpoint, we're doing pretty good. We're doing pretty good. And I think this is also going to be reflected into the reports that are going to be generated at the top. So based off the landing page and the information that we put into, we can dig a little bit deeper into these segmentations to find some insights and what the tool is actually going to be telling us. So from a tuition standpoint, green means good, excellent. We're maintaining a healthy tuition rate and is really paying off. So we're able to see if we were fully at our full license capacity based on what we have entered in for our occupancy and tuition section, we would be right around a $1.3 million generating company. What are we doing right now before discounts? Right about 1 million. So there's probably some opportunity as far as enrollment goes, and the tool fully recognizes that. But based off of our capacity and based off our enrollment, we're pretty good. We're doing really good and staying in line. And it also give you a breakdown by classroom of a good visual of where the maximum opportunity is. Of course, it's in the threes. 3-year-olds we tend to see is probably one of your largest areas of profit gain, meaning the cost per child and compared to the tuition that you're charging for that child is where your greatest margin will be historically and nationally. So this reflects that same data, and we can see that we can really kind of maybe look at some how we're shifting our staffing and making sure that our ratios are good there to maximize some of that profitability. And then we can also step into some what if forecasting. So what if we do have a 10% increase in our revenue in our overall tuition? What does that look like? Do we balance out? Is our enrollment kind of amplifying the difference that we're seeing, this opportunity that we're seeing, or is our enrollment pretty good for the amount of tuition that we're charging? I think this allows you to see over the course of a 10% increase, a 20% increase, where everything is being exacerbated and where you can kind of focus in from a tuition standpoint. Same, you can also do some baseline, some rainy day forecasting if you want to say our tuition decreases by 10%, where and what classrooms are going to get hit the most, so you can actively take an approach from your staffing as well on managing those classrooms. I think this is just a really good tool to understand the impact of what if forecasting and take some steps and necessary precautions of utilizing this tool. And the same for discounting and occupancy too. So stepping into discounting, we see that what we saw before in the report, we're almost double the average on a net revenue basis. We do have a 10% ratio of cost due to our discounting, and that's because it's very laid out here. So at full revenue capacity, at full capacity from a licensing standpoint, if we're charging our current rates, we should be hitting around a 1.3. Now, before discounting, based on our actual enrollment, we're about a $1 million generator. What our discounts are costing us at the current moment is almost $100,000. And I think this is where we can really see some great data come from this tool, because as owners and operators, we want to allow our families to be able to afford and be able to come into our curriculum as accessible, make that as accessible and easy as possible, especially on the finance side, especially on their wallets. We want to be very sensitive to that. But we would be doing this on a business side and from our team's perspective and building out our curriculum, building out our overall operations if we didn't understand the cost of what we're giving away. And I think this discounting is a good example of how that number can slowly build up and really take away and eat away at your overall revenue. And this is just well presented here. Again, we like to see it closer to that 5%, being very sensitive to the fact that staffing is a major issue right now across the nation, getting quality employees to not only come into the schools and be a part of your organizations, but stay a part of your organizations. So some of those staffing discounts are vital. And we don't want you to mess with that, but we do encourage you to take a look at the other discounts that you're providing to your families and see, is it worth it? Are you really getting a lot of revenue generation off of what it's costing you here? And again, we have some what if forecasting here, which I think is a valuable tool in assessing, is it really costing you what you're actually giving away? So if we have a 10% tuition rate increase and we compound that by taking away just 5% of our overall discounts, we drop that down to 9%. Now, where I think it can be really impactful is if we limit not only the discounts that we offer, but for the classrooms limit the classrooms that discount can be applied to. So let's just say for overall effect, we're taking away our infants and toddlers right off the cuff, but we're also going to, then maybe that industry didn't pan out as much. And let's take away the multiple child. I mean, we significantly cut out um, our discounting without even touching our staff discount. So we kept all those in check. But look, I mean, we picked up almost $75,000 straight to our revenue, which flowed straight to our bottom line from an expense standpoint. So I think this is a really useful tool and gives you some really powerful visuals as to where those dollars are going and where we can focus a lot of our attention to make sure that we can recognize as much money to the bottom line and to your operations as well. Green means go. We're good. We're good at a healthy range. We've limited, and we have some great headers up here showing the exact steps that we took in achieving that discount reduction. Now, from an occupancy standpoint, it'll give you a breakdown. We're in a healthy range. So we have the basic red, orange, green system. So orange means you're in a healthy range. There's some room for improvement. But overall, this isn't priority number one for your school. And looking at the pie chart here, it'll show you a tuition breakdown as well as an enrollment breakdown by each classroom. So I think, again, it'll give you some what if forecasting of enrollment. If you shifted around some of your full-time, part-time, what that would look like for a distribution standpoint, as well as for a net revenue standpoint. Really great visuals, awesome what if forecasting. I love how this tool presents this information so that it's really digestible, but also effective in taking this information directly into your school's operations. Stepping into staffing, staffing is always going to be a critical point. Even if we are running a massively low salary cost at 42%, I think the what if, again, is definitely worth looking into, because honestly, whenever we look at from a salary perspective, a lot of the questions we get is you can't really control the increasing rate of salary costs. So how do we mitigate that risk, or how do we offset that risk to our profitability? And a lot of times the first gut reaction is to, well, we got to manage our employees better. Well, honestly, we're managing our employees very, very well. I think the only option is to look at the other side, is are we actually charging what we need to from a tuition perspective that reflects the quality of teachers and the longevity of our teachers that we have in our program. So we need to really take steps to make sure that we're reflecting that. And this what if forecast takes all that into account. So it's saying, over the next little bit, we probably expect our salaries to increase, let's say a conservative 10%, a very wide margin. But what also happens if we increase our salaries just like a small 5% of that? We still maintain a very healthy percentage from our P&L standpoint, but we're able to pay our employees exactly the market wage. We're able to maintain a very attractive environment for our employees to work and to, attribute all of their expertise into our curriculum that we so desperately need right now. So you can see the large swing here is if we kept our tuition the same, but we had to adjust our salaries to the market rate. But if we pass that along, effectively communicating that to our families, we can see some really good benefits here on the P&L side. And the same thing for facility costs, and we can step into that as well. We're in a healthy range. Our facility cost per square foot is in a really good range. Typically, it'll give you some really good information as far as what we at Hinge have seen over the past, several decades, as far as national pricing and current pricing. We try to keep this fairly up to date with what we are seeing in the market real time. And this 12 to 15 per square foot has definitely rang true on a historical average But again, the what if forecasting is great. So it really gives you a gauge of what can I really afford, given that right now I'm sitting at a 13%. So my mortgage or my rent is 13% of the overall revenue that I'm generating. We typically like to see that between, depending on the facility that you operate in. If it's a newer facility, it'll be on the higher end. If it's a little bit older facility or a smaller facility, it might be on the lower end. But it also has a lot to do with the relationship and the contract that is in place with the landlord of your facility. So we'd like to see that between 10 to, if it's a brand new state of the art facility, and depending on the market, especially, it could creep up to 14. 15 is really pushing it, but 13 to 12 is a very comfortable number where a lot of operators can be very successful in. But overall, I think this gives you great insights. And I forgot to mention, but as we were walking through a lot of this insights page, the tool will recommend some articles and videos based off of the webinars that are here in the direct link and the articles and blogs that are on the direct link that attribute directly to the insights and what this tool says that you can work on the most. So right here, we're pretty in a healthy range. There's probably some things that we can look into, and it'll refer us to the sprint so that we can look at our second largest expense. What are some good content behind that? Also, real estate options for your childcare business, really understanding the dynamic of, are we operating correctly if we lease or if we own? What information can we take back to the drawing table when it comes to negotiating contracts? A lot of the good information is in those blogs as well. And the tool does that for all facets in this tool. So a lot of data, a lot of really good stuff, a lot of really good information that I'm really excited that we have grown into and started to really pay attention and develop over especially the past year. I think we'll step into a little bit of that information in a second, as far as how we can take this information and go one step further. But as far as the framework itself and utilizing this webpage, I think we've covered everything that I would like to. Again, if you feel like I've stepped over something, or you're just having a question as we're walking through all this, now that we've covered the inputs, we've covered the different segmentation and the reports and insights of what this tool has to offer, please shout out any of those questions in the chat, and Meredith will pick them up and we'll review them in time. So let's step back into our presentation and kind of look at some recommended best practices of how we use this. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we have several team members in on this webinar as well. And right now, I'd kind of like to bring in Christine. She kind of heads up our financial services and really spends a lot of time and has been an integral part of developing this tool to what it is today. And Christine and her team have taken a really special interest in going alongside the owner operators in their financial journey, and really leveraging this tool to maximize not only their operational performance today, but going forward, and making sure that they have continual success from a financial standpoint. Christine, do you want to take it?
Hi, Taylor. Yes, thank you so much. Yes, we've developed a journey for business owners. We just walked together down this path to really understanding the financials, how to leverage framework, to really understand what you should be charging, how do you break even, and it just goes on and on from there. And so we're really excited to finally bring the financial literacy to the table for the business owners, and do anything we can to grow a healthy and sustainable business going forward. We're super excited about it. Thanks, Taylor. That was really great. Really great insight to framework. And I love the the results of the reports and the what ifs. It's just a lot of fun to play with.
Yeah, and I know, and you and your team go even a step further into those details and really go at the heart of what's driving all of those reports, and how they can how the owner can really leverage and make some really impactful decisions based on
the trick is to really align your chart of accounts, your categories that you see on your profit and loss, align them with the app so it's really easy to input the information. Keep up with your enrollment per class. And so you always have it at your fingertips when you want to come in and update information and check it out. And then play with those scenarios to see what you could do to improve and meet those. When you say benchmarks, Taylor, you're really referring to an industry standard that sets a goal for all of us to work towards, right?
That's right. Yeah. And I mean, just some really quick practices before we step into a few announcements of looking what's coming up on the horizon. But we really recommend you, as much and as frequently as you can get into this tool, do it. It just allows you to, in real time, understand what decisions did I make last month and how did that impact my financials? And based on the reports that this tool kind of gives you, how did those decisions impact and what can we do better going forward? So as often as you can get in this tool, as comfortable as you can get in this tool, I think the benefits just compound as you go from there. Also, getting your teams involved, get your directors involved if you have multiple locations for your company, because if they get a little bit of buy-in into what the numbers are telling, and they can see directly the story that the numbers are telling in their operations, they can make more informed decisions based on their locations and their unique perspective of how they manage their business. I think this brings in a really good segue to one of the frequently asked questions that we get very, very regularly is how can we manage multi-sites within the framework platform from an owner's perspective if we do that. And for that, I'd like to bring back Meredith Douglas if she can kind of walk us through how to best tackle that situation and how we can really leverage the tool from a multi-site perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Great overview, Taylor, of the entire program. You were able to provide so many more beneficial insights from your financial background and having worked in childcare centers. So that was very helpful. I learned a lot, which is always good. I'm going to steal the screen from you for 1 minute so that I can show you guys one part of your framework that you may not have taken a look at yet. So whenever you're logged into your account, there's a little drop down here where you can go into your account settings. And this is where you can add additional licenses if you are a multi-site owner. And you can adjust billing, adjust what users are part of those additional licenses. It'll let you play around, obviously, with your account settings. So I just wanted to give you guys a quick sneak peek at this. So you'll have a lot of information back here as far as your security, which would be how if you need to reset your password. But here in licenses, if you are, let's say you own 3 sites, your main site will be this initial account that you create. But if you want to get your other 2 sites in, you'll just need to add 2 licenses. And depending on what kind of subscriber you are, if you're a monthly subscriber, it'll be, I believe, $20 a month for each additional location. So it's a minimal fee. If you're an annual subscriber, it'll be $200 for the year. So you get about $40 off, is that right? So you get a little bit of a discount if you subscribe as an annual member instead of a monthly member. I'm a monthly member. So if I'm a 3-site person, all I have to do is put 2 right here and it'll show you right up here. It'll be $40 a month, which will be $140 a month for my subscription. And all you have to do is click add. And as soon as you do that, it's going to charge me for those 2, but it's okay. I have a special account. And then once you do that, you just go here to users. And once it updates in the back end, it'll allow you to add new users for those accounts. So all you'll have to do, this should say 1 out of 3. So hopefully it'll update pretty quickly for us. Not yet, but it'll have to speak to our payment platform. And then once it speaks to it, it should be able to go back here and you should be able to add new. And all you have to do is just type in an email address, put first name, last name. If you just want to be the person who is managing those accounts, maybe you have multiple email addresses like an info at or an accounting at, enter those in here and you can do these. We recommend getting your directors involved. So the director of one of your schools, get them involved, let them help manage the numbers of the school, kind of, delegate, as we all say, is great for an owner to do. Delegate this to people and get them more involved in making you a more profitable business. So I just wanted to give you guys a quick overview of how to add licenses, so that if you are a multi-site user, you can get even more out of this program than just having one site. That's it for me.
Awesome. I think this is a really valuable part that we're kind of integrating into this little workshop of areas that we're continually trying to improve this model for all users. And we'll have a new highlighted section for next month's call, but we specifically wanted to give some time to the multi-site users because we get that question so very frequently. I think, Meredith, I can take the presentation back and just roll over our last slide before we wrap up.
Stop share. Grab it again.
Awesome. So now with all of that information, we wanted to give you just a few other avenues that you could follow up on if you wanted to learn more or kind of invest a little bit more into the idea of leveling up your not only your financial literacy, but the overall financial health of your organization. So we have coming up on Tuesday, September 26th, will be our next QuickBooks online training course. That is again presented by Christine. She does a fantastic job on that, and kind of running off of the heels of that training course, we have the QuickBooks Cleanup, which has cash flow management and long-term planning that Christine and her team help with the monthly financial coaching, which is an invaluable part to the overall process of becoming financially healthy for your overall center and childcare services. That is the integral part of what Christine was mentioning as your financial journey. She really takes you step by step, no matter how sophisticated, or if you just opened up your school last month. Christine has navigated the entire journey from a financial standpoint on how to build the foundations to be a very sustainable, very successful, long-term childcare provider, and make it a profitable operation as well. And of course, if you want any more information on any of the information that we've presented here, as far as framework or any of the financial coaching services that we provide, or QuickBooks training, feel free to hit this link, copy this down at hingeadvisors.com/financial coaching. And of course, you can navigate our webpage to find that link as well. Now, we have a few more minutes before we can call it time, but I wanted to open it up and see if we had any direct questions, any questions for Christine, any questions for Meredith, as far as new developments, what this tool looks like going further. Are there any input questions, things of that nature? Feel free to drop those in there, or just come on and shout them out. All right, I don't see anything hitting the box, and I don't see Meredith waving me down. So I think maybe we covered way too much. Maybe we need to leave a little bit out so we can have some back and forth and see some beautiful faces. But again, if you have any questions after this, this recording or this Zoom is recorded, and we'll hit the YouTube link pretty shortly. I'm pretty sure Meredith will send out a link to this if you want to go back, maybe take some notes if I breezed past one of the areas that you want to spend a little more time on. we'll have that link provided to you so that you can take as much time as you need in inputting your center's information and really maximizing the availability and quality of this tool that we are very, very excited about and very excited to continue to develop. So again, thank you all for jumping on with me for reviewing all of this. Oh, wait a second. It's just good old KP. Thanks, KP. I think we're at a good spot to wrap up. But again, if you have any questions as you kind of go back into this recording, or if you have any questions as you're inputting the information live, please feel free to reach out to any of the Hinge team. Again, we're all pretty well versed in the functionality of Framework. And of course, my email and contact information is available on the Hinge website as well. So thank you all again for hopping on with me, and we look forward to seeing y'all and working with y'all in the near future. Thanks, guys.